I thought to break the ice, something when I used to run Virgin Atlantic on a hands-on basis, anytime I was on a flight, I wanted to try to make people smile even more than they already smile. One of my tricks was to bring a suitcase full of bog rolls. The customs always found it a bit strange that I was carrying bog rolls onto my planes. So what we're going to do today, I came early with my suitcase. I put a bog roll under every other seat in the front row. And the idea is to see which row actually thinks this through. You've got to roll this bog roll back to the back of the auditorium and then down the other side, because I could only afford one bog roll for every 2 rows. So don't you start yet. Actually, all right, that's quite clever. Okay. But he's cheating already. Yep. Okay, so has everybody got their bog roll ready? Yeah, put your phone down and get your bog roll ready. Come on, it's more important things.
Do all the front row want to hold up?
All right. And often the tortoise wins on this, so there's no necessarily great hurry, because if it breaks, that's your 2 rows out, and it's all your fault.
So it can't break. You've got to get it up and back.
Are we ready? On your marks, get set, go.
We're doing okay.
Okay, you've got to bring it back down your neighbouring row.
Don't break it now.
Do we have a winner?
Ready?
All right, we'll let everybody finish. They got shorter rolls, so we'll work out. We'll keep going. Oh, the bog roll's finished. We wondered whether it's going to come the whole way down. All right, anyway, I think we disrupted enough, but thank you for joining in.
Good job, everyone. I told you we were going to have fun today, didn't I? What a way to kick off. Richard, thank you for that activity. Now, one of the...
You can keep the bog roll, you know.
Yeah. Don't say we don't give you nice things. There we go. Now, Richard, one of the things I think myself, but probably most of the world, was pretty worried about was when they saw a post recently with your near-death experience while you were out cycling. Now, I've since found out that you have had a near-death experience for every year of your life, which I find remarkable. And I'm wondering if at any age and stage you're going to stop pushing yourself outside your comfort zone.
Yeah, I've been lucky, but I don't think it'll be much fun not to push oneself outside one's comfort zone. My kids, a couple of months ago, said, "Dad, would you like to come with us on something called the Strive Challenge in Europe?" And because they were going, obviously I said yes, and I looked and it said Tuscany and the Alps, and it sounded very nice. Anyway, I didn't expect it to be so brutal. I mean, we headed off just over a month ago yesterday. and we crossed the Alps. Then we did a 100-mile bike ride a day through the mountains, to nearly 2,500 kilometers to the south of Italy. Then we swam to Sicily. Then we ran up Mount Etna, and then we climbed the last bit of it. And
as everyone does, right? Naturally. Amazing.
Anyway, the good thing is that for about a week, my body is now where it was when I was 28. So I'm feeling as fit as I've ever felt, and it won't last, but it's fun while it lasts.
So what motivates you to keep continually doing it? I mean, have you made it a habit? Is it who you surround yourself with that keeps up that propensity to just keep on pushing?
I've got the greatest pleasures in my life of setting myself, I suppose, seemingly impossible challenges and then trying to overcome them. And whether it's in business, whether it's in not-for-profit ventures, or whether it's in personal challenges. And I think the personal challenge side, it's helped keep the Virgin brand fresh. The head of British Airways is unlikely to be foolish enough to jump on a balloon and try to fly around the world, and therefore, the British Airways has got a ring about it. Its brand. It wouldn't be able to move itself into other areas, whereas Virgin's got, I think, that excitement, and I enjoy it. If the truth be known, I just love seeing what I'm capable of.
That's awesome. Peter, I want to jump down to you. Pushing yourself outside your comfort zone is one thing, but when it comes to that notion of disruptors, are they born or made? Where do you sit on that debate? What's your view?
I think that for me, you're either born that way or you're not. I think that for a lot of folks, it's something that they aspire to, but that ultimately it's very uncomfortable, it's very hard. I think the difficulty of doing really disruptive things is something that we don't talk about very frequently from the other side, but it is really hard. And I tell people, I have a lot of entrepreneurs now that are maybe raising their angel or their seed round. They sit down with me and they want to pitch me on an idea and get my thoughts. And the question I always ask them is how important is this idea to you? Are you ready to be totally exhausted, 30 pounds overweight, and single in 3 years? Because that's what success looks like. When you get together like a group of 10 tech CEOs that have made the other side, and my firm's not successful. My firm is, marginally successful at best. We're very lucky to have great investors. But, at best case scenario, we've just been a little bit successful. We've scaled the business to a big point now and all that stuff. But even with that success, the price that you pay to get there is incredibly high. And so it either has to be an amazing idea that you're really willing to sacrifice yourself for, or secondly, you have to be a little crazy. And I think it's probably both. And then eventually maybe you get to a point where you have a crazy, awesome global brand, and you can go on all these sweet adventures, and you hire an amazing CEO to run the business day to day, and you become Richard Branson. But the struggle to get there is, hugely, hugely real. And people don't spend enough time acknowledging how real that is.
Emma, I'd love your thoughts on that.
Can I jump in? Just to be controversial, I think you could argue that you have to be born, which you're saying, but I actually think that if you have the right mindset, people in this room who've never, not born that way, they can become disruptors. And they can actually shock themselves as to what they're capable of. So,
I don't want to pick a fight with you because we've only just met and it would be really awkward. I think there are a couple of other things to add to that, which is number one, I think people sometimes confuse disruptors and innovators. And I think actually disruption and innovation is arguably something slightly different. Second of all, it's not all doom and gloom, although I entirely agree about the hardship and the labor that's required, and I certainly can provide testimony to that. But equally, sometimes there's something about naivety. If I think to myself, would I have done all of the things that I did in my 20s if I knew how hard it was going to be? I've got to be honest, I'm not sure that I would have done. But now I can do nothing else. There is nothing else I can do. I'm unemployable by anybody else. I might be shooting myself in the foot when I sell out and someone here thought they were going to offer me a massive and exciting package. But You know, the other thing is you do become a version of yourself when you take that hard route, where you become more adept at challenge, more adept at not hearing no. You know, quite often we have some things happen in our business where I think, how am I going to solve this? And there literally is no answer. And and my co-founder is kind of wired the same way as me. We just say, well, we don't know what the answer is,
so
we'll find a way.
I think the flip side of that is that, and it's not all doom and gloom, because I don't want to overrepresent that part. You know, I've been incredibly fortunate to do exactly what I wanted to do for years now, working on a product that I believe is hugely important for the world, that I wake up every single day at about 6:30 in the morning stoked to work on. And that's an incredible blessing in anyone's life if you have a job that you are genuinely excited about every single morning at 6:30 in the morning. And so that blessing is huge and beautiful, and it makes all the other things worth it. I think to your point, yeah, it's a huge high price. I think to your point though, everybody can be disruptive within their own bounds. But I think some people are born with greater bounds and a greater tolerance for pain, and it doesn't particularly make us good people. Like, I'm not, for example, a particularly good person. I'm not a surprise. I'm not like a great partner. You know, I wasn't a great partner while I was building my business to anyone that I was with in a romantic relationship.
You have to be
yeah,
selfish
for sure.
to build a great business.
I wasn't a particularly great friend, but I was great at building a product, right? And so just because your bounds are further doesn't make you a special person. None of us are special people. So, well, maybe some of us are. I'm not. What it does mean is that there's one thing that we're comfortable pushing the bounds on really far.
Solly, can I ask a question of you here? Because I know we were talking this morning about the fact that you're hiring young people straight out of school now. In fact, you've got 2 16-year-olds that are doing a full-time internship for 12 months in your business. So from your standpoint, are you picking these incredible made disruptors, or are you, born disruptors, or do you believe that part of what you're doing in your business is actually making a generation of disruptors?
Yeah, so I sort of sit in the middle of the argument here, which is, I think people are born with it, but no one really knows that it could be deep down inside of you. So, there could be many, many sort of entrepreneurs in the world that just haven't necessarily discovered or had the experiences in life that it brings it out. So we recently brought on these young 16-year-olds, which it was an interesting experience, to say the least. So we approached them. These 2 young kids created Instagram followings of over 2 million people whilst they're doing their GCSEs. They were telling me stories of how they'd be going to PE and sort of posting just before they go out and do their lessons and stuff like that. We had to bring their parents in to obviously encourage them to sort of move city. So these guys were literally sort of moving away from home and moving city. But I mean, the sort of potential that's inside of these young kids who have sort of off their own back created these accounts already. They're entrepreneurs at heart, but they probably don't even know it yet. I know when I was 16, 15, I didn't know that I was going to go and run my own business.
Technical challenge.
I think we have to get it out of people. So I think it can be born, but it's not like, those 2 people over there are entrepreneurs. There's much more entrepreneurial people out there that we don't even recognize. It just needs to be brought out of them.
I'd love to add something to that, which is, there are 250 million young people in Africa, for example, who have no prospects of employment. And, I've taken some trips there recently, and the reality is that there is no alternative to entrepreneurship for them. There is absolutely nothing else. So the other thing is, what is entrepreneurship, and and really, what does that really mean? If you can start something that can feed your family, then really in Africa you are disruptive and innovative. And if you've built a vegetable garden in a place that was otherwise unfertilized, you've done something staggering and special. So we also have some really high benchmarks, especially amongst everybody on the stage today.
Richard, I've been intrigued for your perspective, because I know we've had a bit of almost a lonely journey painted down the one end, and I know part of the entrepreneurship piece for you has very much been creating that culture, bringing your family into the journey as well. How important for you is who you surround yourself with on these sorts of disruptive journeys? How much does that matter?
It's incredibly important. I mean, I noticed one thing you said was, you've got the time to go off and strive for a month. But I found the time to do that in my 20s, in my 30s, in my 40s when I was building the businesses. And I think one thing I learned very early on was to surround myself with people better than me in every aspect of Virgin, and put myself out of business as quickly as possible. So my mind never stops. It's an idea a minute, and because of my screw it, let's do it philosophy, we're keeping on planting more acorns as we're going along. But I will get in there for maybe a couple of months, get the acorn just going. But then I will find a team. I will then retreat. In those days I would retreat back to my houseboat, spend time with my family, spend time looking after myself, spend time having a life, and start diving in if there were problems, diving in. If the company needed a bit of a push here or there, but making sure that the day-to-day running was always done by somebody else. And I think that's really important for people in this room who are building businesses. Too many people cling on, they feel that they're the only people who can do it. That if they're not around, this business is going to disappear. It's just not true. If they if they can spend the time to find the right people, they'll suddenly find that that it's freed them up to do incredible other things as well.
It's a challenge, I think, when you're running a business, is taking a bit of time out. I've learned to do that recently. I've done a couple of trips to Africa where I thought I went to Silicon Valley in May and took 3 days completely away from my business and mixed and met some incredibly interesting people who've already scaled and built really interesting businesses. And at the time it felt a little bit self-indulgent and not a great use of time, but definitely it gave me some mental space and some time to come back with bigger and better and bolder ideas and feel more able to do it. So I think it's really critical to try and have those experiences that don't necessarily align with your day job. But of course we're all different people, and some of us seek that out, some of us don't. There are different things that make us all thrive and strive, I think.
And you definitely can get there. Like in my case, I was forced to take about 8 weeks off this summer, and came back and the business was doing maybe better than when I left, which was very humbling. Talk about being made redundant. I came back from being in California for 2 months, and they'd taken my desk. I was like, shit. But that happens over time, right? And so it took 2-3 years to hire an amazing executive team. One of those people is here today. She's frankly about twice as talented as I am and would do a better job of being CEO than I would. And so you can get there, and maybe you can get there in 6 months. It took me 2.5 years to get there. I now work in our offices 2.5 days a week, right? And so when I came back from leave, I was like, let's dial it back. Let's have more creative time, more free thinking time. So you can get there. It just takes time. Well,
2.5 years is not a lot of time. So you've done exactly what I'm suggesting, and
you have to tell me how to do the 6-month plan.
Yeah, me too. I want that one.
Once you've done the first time at 2.5 years, your next company you can do it in 6 months. But a lot of people, they never get there. They just cling on for year after year after year. Just by you going away to Africa, if you're not in the building, somebody else becomes the person that people come to with all the niggly problems in the building, and they'll get dealt with, and so sometimes it's quite a good idea to almost withdraw from the building completely, and let somebody else be the person who's taking all the burden of those problems.
You've got to let someone else shine. Also, you've got to give people responsibility, but you've also got to give yourself the time to be able to think, some mental space.
Now, all of the audience here are on some various stage of the ideas journey. It might be an idea that they've got that's just come to fruition, they're thinking about how to put it into place, or they're well and truly on their own disruptive journey in their own business or inside a major organisation or whatever context they're working in. So, Richard, to your point around growing the acorn, what are the really important things, and I'm intrigued for all the panel's views on this, because you're all very much at various stages of your own journey in disrupting. What is so important about how that disruptive idea starts that allows it to get the fuel that turns it into something? What's really important in that early stage, do you think?
I'm just trying to sort of think of some examples at Virgin. I mean, we started Virgin Atlantic, for instance, with one second-hand 747, and we were up against British Airways with 400 planes, and Pan Am with 400 planes, and TWA with 400 planes, and nobody thought we could survive, and so we just had to make sure that what went on in that 747 was so good and such fun that that word of mouth would get out there, and Virgin Atlantic would survive, and so we innovated in. I think we brought in a whole lots of people who had nothing to do with the airline business to come up with fresh ideas. And our cabin crew, 95% had never worked on another airline. They got trained from scratch, so they came in excited and fresh with fresh approach. Our captains and our pilots, I think we let them have a bit of experience.
Probably a good idea.
And the engineers under the plane. So we introduced stand-up bars in our planes. We introduced seatback videos that nobody else had done anywhere in the world. We did fun things like, with these lovely pepper pots and salt pots, and they kept on getting stolen. So we put under, instead of replacing them for something less stealable, or we just put stolen from Virgin Atlantic under them, and they became a great advert for Virgin. And then we did fun things in our marketing against British Airways. We kept on pulling their tail, and occasionally they would come around and bite us. But we had a lot of fun doing it. And then from one plane, we went on 2 planes, 3 planes, and so on. And so the key is just make sure that if you're going to take on a big guy, that your quality is a hell of a lot better than them. So that when they try to launch dirty tricks against you, the public stick with you.
Nice. Solly, what about you? Early stage momentum. What's key?
I think hungry people. I think if you give people a license to fail, as well as succeed, and give them the space to do that, I think that can create disruption. So one of my sort of fondest experiences in that is I brought some people on to run the LadBible. Which was mainly a sort of Twitter audience for us that led to the website and so on and so on. And these guys came on, and they'd all created their own large accounts and audiences and stuff like that. And I said to them, don't start an account on Facebook because we want to hedge our best bets and hedge the risk. Anyway, a week later, they started the page on Facebook without me even knowing. And then within a month of that, they created, I think the audience was at 1 million people. So, sort of giving people that space, having hungry people who have ideas, and giving them a license to do that, I think is so important. And I sort of bit my lip. I was partly annoyed that they'd gone against me, but at the same time, they created this huge audience, and I thought that was amazing. So sort of that was one of my biggest learning experiences from it, is giving people enough space to come up with ideas, and you're not always necessarily right as the business leader. Be proven wrong. Why not? So that's probably the biggest thing for me.
Emma?
I think a hybrid of 2 things. One is work ethic, which you mentioned about perseverance. I started my working life in McDonald's at 16 and have been working ever since, and I think that gave me the persistence to just stick with it and do whatever job I needed to do, whether I was like in charge of washing up in the kitchen of our first office or actually running the business. The second thing is I very much believe in a sell, design, build model. People give it different names, but I think it's really important to check that there's a market that will pay for your product before you start spending a lot of time on whatever it is you're thinking of building. So I do very much believe in going out and talking to real potential customers. And effectively, in my current business, we did that. We went out and spoke to CEOs. We talked about what we had built, were building, which in truth we were sort of building and would be building. But what we really understood was what people would pay for, how much they'd pay for it, and why they might want it, so we could tailor it. So I think that is really important. Don't spend a year in a dark room or in your garage thinking about your idea and constantly iterating it until you think it's perfect. I think the most important thing is talking to the people that will actually buy your product, because without them, it doesn't matter how great your idea is. If it's the best kept secret, then what was the point?
Peter, any thoughts?
You're going to say the opposite now.
No.
Shaking your head.
No, so actually shaking my head in agreement.
Okay.
I can agree, I'm capable. No, so I think two things are important. One, don't spend a lot of money. So, you're talking about starting with 1 plane, not 10 planes. I see a lot of people starting businesses and are deploying capital way too quickly. We actually we're up at about 20 people when we raised capital. And we, sort of stayed alive a long time on revenue, booked revenue very early. And the key to doing that is to spend no money, which I can't emphasize enough. The second thing is get your product into the hands of people as quickly as possible. And so I hear a lot of startups now that they're like, oh, we're in stealth, or we're in beta, or we're, iterating on our whatever. Like, don't do that shit. Just no, fuck that. Ship your product as quickly as possible and find out that it's terrible, and then start improving as quickly as possible. One of my co-founders has a great saying. He says, if your code doesn't embarrass you, you waited to ship too long. So you need to be a little embarrassed. Yeah, really? You got to be embarrassed when you ship stuff, and get it into the hands of real people as fast as possible while spending as little money as possible. I'd say that's the secret.
Emma, I want to loop back to something you referenced earlier, but I want you to expand on it. You made the comment that there's a difference between disruptors and innovators. So for you, is disruptors a bullshit term? Has it just become a buzzword, or is it just that it's different to what innovators are?
It's definitely not a bullshit term. I see we're going with really high-level English here. Just calling a spade a spade. It's not a bullshit term. It definitely says what it does on the tin. The only people that think disruption are bullshit are probably people who also think climate change is a hoax. So no, I'm good with that. But yeah, I do think that sometimes you can mesh disruption and innovation a little bit. I mean, without getting into theory, disruption is often a label put on practically everything. In theory, and I'm waiting for someone to debate with me, disruption is creating new consumers from something where there wasn't really a market beforehand, which is why some people...
No, I don't think so.
Do you not? No, I knew we were going to debate. There's going to be an argument before we leave here, and there's going to be swear words flying. But from my perspective, I would say that I do think innovation and disruption is slightly different, because you can do something better. It doesn't necessarily mean you're incredibly innovative. You can build a great and successful business off the back of innovating something slightly. Disrupting for me is a little bit of a stronger word. Hit me with it. Let's debate.
What do you got?
Yeah, what do you got?
Trying to disrupt the panel.
I know.
I'm just going to pull my sleeves up. I mean, I thought this was a panel and
Going to
not
be
a
arm
fight.
wrestling by the end of this one down the end.
So first of all, apologies for my language.
I'm going to tell your mum. She's not going to be happy.
She watches this stuff.
I bet.
Secondly,
If Trump gets into power, maybe you'll give your
give him
country
a
back to us Brits, and then
Yeah.
we can get a proper speak proper.
Probably.
So many great things coming out of today's panel.
I know. So anyways, serious things. So disruption definitely is a bullshit term, but it's still meaningful. I wear
meaningful, but bullshit.
socks with ducks on them. That's kind of bullshit. Why don't I just wear black socks? Well, I enjoy these duck socks. And so even if something is total nonsense, it's not meaningful.
It's not meaningful per se, although obviously
But
they're
it's
very
meaningful
nice.
because people attach meaning to it. I attach meaning to my duck socks. I think they're lucky. Disruption is the same thing. People attach meaning to that term, and so that's what gives it weight. But I'll give two examples. Innovation is building something very new. So I have a friend that does biotech research. They're working on a pill that cures a specific type of cancer. There's no pill in the world that cures this kind of cancer right now. They're really close to pulling it off. That is pure innovation. They're not taking anybody else's market. My business takes market share from other people. It certainly creates new markets because we can extend services to people that can't be served currently by the current financial system, but we take market share from the banks, right? Virgin Money is another good example. That's not really innovation. There are innovative aspects to it, but it's really disruption because you're taking from an incumbent. So I'd say when you're disrupting, you're coming into the market in a big way, blowing it up, and reordering that market. With innovation, and you can have disruption and innovation at the same time, innovation can exist purely separately by itself as just creating whole new markets, whole new business models. So like fintech, by nature, has to be disruptive, whereas, because we already have financial markets. Whereas, for example, AR is purely innovative. Well, I don't know, I guess you can argue that it's disrupting the film industry. All right, fuck it, that's all I got.
I think he's just going to monologue, basically.
This man is disrupting, innovating, going to knock the Daily Mail out of Great Britain one day. Give him a round of applause. It reminded me, when I was a bit younger than you, when I was 16 or 17, I was starting a business which was not that dissimilar, but it was aimed at young people, run by young people, a magazine, and we didn't have the internet then. And we had to think of innovative ways of getting young people to go to war zones and other places to report. And the Vietnamese War was going on in those days. So there was a 16-year-old journalist called Julian Mannion. He wasn't really a journalist in those days, but he was a 16-year-old. And he wanted to go to Vietnam for us. And so we went to the Daily Mirror and said, we're sending this journalist to Vietnam, but we thought he could also work for you a little bit on the side, and you could pay for his salary, and you could pay for his tickets, and they agreed. So we managed to get our war correspondents put around the world thanks to these newspapers. But anyway, well done on what you're doing. It's great.
Yeah, I'm gonna have to take a note on that. I'll have to get some of them to stop paying my stuff.
It's good. I
think it's
I don't think the Daily Mail will, but maybe the Mirror.
We'll get the other ones. But I mean, on the innovation and the disruption thing, again, I'm going to sit in the middle.
We're not really on opposing sides.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I think you should be sat there and I should be sat there. Okay. But yeah, so I think that, like you said, I think when you are disrupting something, you're making change, you're coming into a market that's already established and so on and so on, but the principles in which you do that are quite often innovating. So you're innovating in a new way, whether you're marketing, whether you're doing something different technically. The two, I think, come hand in hand, and sort of lead to the point of change. And I think in the media world itself, I think in the whole lifespan of newspapers, you're seeing platforms such as Facebook, Google, Snapchat, all these new people. They're almost changing every single day, and probably have changed the same amount in one day that the newspaper media model probably changed in a whole sort of lifespan of it. And these platforms have come and disrupted and innovated models in which people used to consume media. So I'm sort of in the middle.
I think the thing that's important for everybody here, and the point that probably resonates with everybody on the panel, is that we started very small and very agile. And what we did was we shook something up, whether it was a very large airline, a very large newspaper, the financial industry, for us, the software industry. So I think we have that in common, and I think that's an important thing for everyone today, which is it doesn't matter if you feel like you're facing Goliath, if you do something fantastic. If you build something, if you design something, if you create some content that is engaging or smart or makes your business run better or more efficiently, then people want to buy that. And you can start small and scale. And I think there's a few examples of that, and in particular, obviously, Richard today.
We've just started skirting on an interesting issue. The reference was made there to driving change, to doing things differently, to adding value. This piece around purpose and disruption, mutually exclusive, coexist. I have a feeling we're going to have divergent views down the end again on this one. But what do you think? Does it have to coexist? Can they be separate? And what is the most valuable disruption if they are different?
So I think it depends what you're trying to do and who you are as a person. So the number one way to make money in tech, and write this down, is to build something that some other large customer could use very easily. So I'll give you an example. Build a front-end banking application that is basically a much better app for banking than HSBC or Barclays have. Why? Because as soon as you get a little bit of traction, maybe raise 3 or 4 million quid, they'll acquire you for 80 million pounds. And because you've taken so little dilution, you as a founder will clear 50 to 60 million pounds, after tax 40 million pounds, which is enough to have a very happy life. You can do that in the space of 18 months. You don't need to have a lot of purpose other than just making money there. For me though, I've never been capable of doing that, probably because I'm not commercial enough. And so for me, I really need a purpose. So the reason that I work on my business today, which is different from ones I've worked on in the past, is not because I'm excited about making money. I haven't really made any money on my business. What I'm excited about is changing the world, which sounds really, really fucking,
I think all entrepreneurs are with
you know, very cliche.
as well.
Yeah, it sounds very
Well,
cliche.
It doesn't.
But
Be proud of
It's a
it.
great ambition.
But for me, I need that purpose, right? But if you're building a business that truly has some shot at changing the world, you're doing something insane. You're doing the impossible. You're like, you know, climbing K2 unsupported with no oxygen. And so you're probably going to fail. Like I'm probably going to fail at what I'm doing. But you do it anyway because you have to do it. And I think that's purpose and disruption. But certainly just doing disruption is a way better way to make money.
Can I ask you, if you were to encapsulate what your purpose is, how would you describe
Yeah,
your
for sure.
game-changing vision for the world?
Yeah, so I want to make it as easy for people to do business with each other. And to do business with each other, you have to be able to transmit value, to transmit money. I want to make it as easy to do that as it is to communicate today. And so today we can WhatsApp message anybody in the world instantly for free, and we can communicate with anybody in the world. And I'm just old enough to remember when that wasn't possible. So I'm pre-smartphones. I'm older than I look. But today we can't economically interact with people at that level of ease. Like if I want to send my friend in Vietnam money, it's days, it's expensive, it's terrible. So I think that's where I want to move the needle to, and I'm super passionate and excited about doing it.
Richard, I'm going to jump down to you. What's your view?
I was just going to ask him one final. I mean, blockchain's also working with Ananda de Soto. Is that something you're involved with?
Yeah.
I mean, that's to me sounds really exciting.
And so it's this idea of not just money, but of digitizing all value at an incredibly cost-efficient basis. So whether that's actual currency, whether that's a commodity, whether that's land, whether that's offering insurance projects, hedging products powered by smart contracts and payment channel technologies, like the technology we're working on is the first legitimate chance in 50, 60 years, literally since Bretton Woods, to rewrite the entire financial system and the way that we provide financial products to the world. And that is deeply fucking exciting.
Let me give you one little thing that excited me about blockchain the most, and this is actually very much Ananda de Soto's baby, and that is, if you take somewhere like Egypt, 90% of people, they've got houses, they've got a garden, but they've got no piece of paper to show ownership of that house or that garden. And without ownership of your property, it's almost impossible to start a business or get a bank loan or anything. So he's trying to get governments to use blockchain to register every single piece of land, and he's been working hard on Egypt and other countries, and that will, I think, that could create a real revolution, economic revolution in these countries that are stagnating, and I think that could be holding them back more than anything. But
yeah, and there's two ways that it's really interesting. One is that most of these countries, land rights are really problematic because basically people have their land confiscated from them by local government officials constantly. So like in Indonesia, this is a huge problem, which is another country that's working on this kind of stuff. And so it can bring a ton of transparency and frankly honesty to what people own and where. But what it's really powerful, and kind of what you were getting at, is that capitalism only works because we can borrow money, right? And you can only borrow money if you have collateral. And you can only collateralize assets if ownership is clearly identified. And so really, what digitizing access is all about, what sort of bringing the rest of the world into the digital financial era, is it's about giving them a shot at capitalism. And for me, like, I'm a unashamed, capitalist. I think it's the best system, the best shitty system for making the world a better place. And so, for me, the effects of what we're doing are going to be huge on the world if we're successful, and bringing it all the way back, that's what justifies all of the effort, all of the struggle, is the incredibly real chance of doing something in our world.
Well, good luck with it.
Yeah, absolutely. It's phenomenal. Solly, I'm intrigued to talk to you on this one because I know you've built your business now to the second largest content provider in the UK, which is remarkable. And you just launched a really interesting program, You OK Mate. So you're starting to really look at the purpose that you can leverage the incredible platform you built for. Where do you sit on this purpose and disruption piece?
So I think purpose for me fuels disruption. So when I started the business, my only intention and purpose was to not have to go and work for someone. And you know, off the back of that, that purpose, obviously the disruption came. I didn't intend for it to be this big or this magnitude, but it didn't. It happened. I guess the next purpose for us is becoming, you know, the biggest influential youth media company in the world. And one of the campaigns, as you rightly talked about, is You OK Mate. So male depression is one of the biggest killers amongst under 50-year-olds. I think it's definitely in the UK. I'm not so sure across the world. But we wanted to use our influence and our audience to encourage young males to speak out about male depression and make it more acceptable to speak to your friends, speak openly about it on social media networks, and just make it much more acceptable because, you know, having friends that have suffered from this, it's almost, you know, it's almost hidden inside you. You feel ashamed to share this. And we've currently, in our first week of the campaign, we've done a 4-part documentary series. I think the first one was with Lou Smith, the gymnast, and we reached 14.8 million people in the first week. And I think that video was watched by 4.8 million people. And just the amount of comments, the amount of engagement, and the amount of influence that it's had on people coming out. And you see on the comments, I've suffered from depression for X amount of years. We need to speak about it more. It's in there, it just needs to be helped out. And we want to help with issues such as that and sort of bring those out to people and have that positive influence on young people.
Phenomenal. That's great. What amazing work. I think that's remarkable. Well done. Emma, what about you?
Can anybody imagine the Daily Mail doing something like that?
I'm going to count the number of digs. I think we're at 2. So if we can get one more in before we're done. Emma, what do you think?
So maybe I can provide a slightly sort of different spin. One of the things that my life has given me, which was, you know, I floated the company at 29, I'm now my 3rd business. I was very fortunate. I launched the Wonder Woman column for The Telegraph. I'm UNICEF's first business advisor. And one of the things that business has therefore given me is a platform and a voice. So I also wholeheartedly am behind the shitty version of capitalism which best presents itself right now. And I really have seen from my trips around Africa that entrepreneurship does change the world because there is actually no alternative. So for me, you know, purpose, I don't think, first of all, that a business specifically has to have a purpose. What I think is really important is that its leaders have a purpose. So for my part, you know, there are lots of different answers I could give you about some of the things I do in my day job, but what I've definitely been able to do is have an amplified voice because I'm fortunate that people ask me to participate in things where I get to say something where perhaps it has a small impact on people or it makes somebody think or I make an epic connection that I know that I can leverage and do something with that makes something happen. I really believe in paying it forward every day and doing a random act of kindness every day. That's something I try and teach everybody that works for me. That may also sound a bit world peace, miscongeniality sort of thing, but I love miscongeniality anyway, so it's fine. As well as Legally Blonde, you know, Elle Woods is my business icon. But it's a bit true, actually. And so, yeah, I do try and teach everybody that comes my way. And the other thing that, you know, capitalism and business provides us with is resource. And that's not just money, that's time and influence and access. So there are things that you can do in your everyday life that have, you know, for my part, one of the things I'm doing at the moment is I have a sort of self-contained spare room top floor, and there's a very small charity that's just set up to try and provide emergency accommodation for refugees and asylum seekers. So at the moment I have a very lovely 17-year-old living with me until we can find him better accommodation, and until people like blockchain, you're working on these sorts of things, can credentialize where he came from and what he should be allowed to have, and is he really who he is. So we can all use our power in different ways, and I think therefore that it doesn't just have to be that your business is necessarily changing the world. It could be that maybe you do. And the common theme I feel amongst most of the amazing entrepreneurs I've met is everybody really is quite sure that they can do something to change the world, make it better, and that's also probably partially a personality thing that you referred to earlier. So you can have purpose in different ways.
What do you think, Richard? How important has purpose been for you individually, but also within the Virgin Group and everything you've done?
I think it's very, very, very important. I mean, obviously, your business itself is changing the world. So, each people in this room who've got a business, they wouldn't be successful unless it was making a positive difference. Otherwise, it wouldn't survive. But the moment you get yourself into a position, of wealth, and we're talking about capitalism not being perfect. If you've got the wealth, you've got wealth that you don't really deserve for the amount of effort you've put in, and therefore enormous responsibility comes with that wealth to get out there and help tackle the problems of this world. And if we can get every single business in this world to take that attitude, we can get on top of almost every problem in this world. Through the business themselves, but through coming up with entrepreneurial, innovative, disruptive ways of looking at different problems in the world and getting out there and tackling them. And then if you do end up becoming a public figure, then you need to use that status to try to campaign on some of the awful iniquities of the world. I'm going tonight to America to try to campaign on getting rid of the death penalty. There's a vote coming up next month in California. America is not, you can't really be a civilized nation if you are still employing the death penalty. Europe got rid of it 70 years ago, and I would say Europe is now civilized. America has got to rid themselves of it. The Philippines, they've got people out there killing, hundreds of people on the streets because they take drugs, and this is with the behest of the Philippines president. Business people cannot just sort of sit back and not speak out on issues like this. Uganda, there's life in prison if you're a gay person, life in prison if you don't report a gay person. Business people cannot do business in a country like that if it behaves so abysmally. We've got to, use our influence to speak out and try to bring some decency to countries. And obviously, in our own countries, there are things we should speak out about, and even if it adversely affects our business.
And so, can you pick Trump up when you're there and stick him in the Philippines or somewhere else?
Say again?
Do you think you could pick Trump up whilst you're in the US and just pop him to the Philippines or somewhere where
there'd
be
slip
less tolerance?
Slip him some dope or something, yeah.
I think that's a good resolution.
And one of the things I would say that you've been incredibly good at over the course of your career is getting others engaged with your purpose and being able to share that passion and get people on board to create enormous butterfly effects, enormous ripple effects of change. What do you think is really important to going about doing that? How do you get people to support the ideas you're out championing?
Well, you have to come up with an idea, just like in business, but you have to come up with an idea that can make a radical difference in the world that other people can believe in. So, we meant in the film, I noticed they had the Elders, which is an organisation that are going into conflicts and trying to resolve conflicts, and where you're attracting the 12 most respected men and women in the world into one of your organizations. Mandela chaired it initially, then Tutu, then now Kofi Annan, and it's relatively easy to get other people to come and work with you and support you. And from that experience, we've set up the Oceanic Elders, the Carbon War Room, the B Team, a number of disruptive organizations to tackle some of the bigger problems of this world. And we've got some incredible people in each of these organizations. And then as business leaders, you can also, I'm involved in something called the Global Drug Commission. We can see, I think, as entrepreneurs and business leaders, situations that are palpably wrong. Like the way politicians treat drugs in Britain, in most countries in the world, in America, filling their prisons up with people who take drugs. It's obviously not the way to deal with the problem. The way to deal with the problem is to treat drugs as a health problem, to help people who've got drug problems, and to, in time, wean them off their addictions. Or if they don't have addictions, then treat it like alcohol or cigarettes. Try to warn people of the danger, but don't lock people up. As business people, we can go and look at examples of countries where it's worked, like Portugal, where they had a massive heroin problem. They got over the problem. They reduced the amount of people taking heroin by 90% by the government helping those people and not imprisoning them.
Right. Now, we're running to a really short time schedule today, so we're going to have to wrap this in 1 second, but I just want to run through the panel and give you any last shot for a quick parting remark, call to action, a takeaway you want to throw to our tribe of disruptors this morning. Pete, I'll kick off with you.
First of all, if you disagree with me or you have a question for me, my email is peter@blockchain.com. And feel very welcome. Yeah, very welcome to email me there.
A lot of people are writing that down. That's a worry for your inbox.
Inboxes are fine. The second thing I'll say is, it's great to be focused on your work. It's great to be focused on building a product that's awesome, that does better for the world. Don't forget to be the best version of yourself. It's something that I struggle with, and it's something that I'm probably more focused on working on now than I've ever been, which is, how do you be the best version of yourself, not just at work, not just building product, but in your personal life? How are you the best possible friend? How are you making the best impact in terms of volunteering work? How are you the best possible partner you can be if you have a partner? Focus on being the best version of yourself, and the rest will fall in line. The last piece of advice I'll leave you with is one of my favorite quotes. It's from Amelia Boone. She's the most formidable long distance and obstacle course racer in the world, for men and women. So she's a woman that beats all the men at long distance racing and obstacle course running. Incredible character. And her favorite quote is, "No one owes you anything." And that's 100% true about entrepreneurship. It's 100% true about life. No one owes you anything. Get out there and get it for yourself.
Love it. Em, any quick final thoughts? Yeah, feel free. Absolutely.
Yeah, I'm not showing my inbox because it's already nuts, but if you need me, I'm on at @ES_entrepreneur on Twitter. I reply to all my tweets. I suppose anything around the concept of paying it forward and random acts of kindness, it ties into something that my father taught me when I was very young, and my father was very influential and still is very influential in everything I do. And he always said, be kind to people on your way up because you don't need them on your way down. And I've had plenty of challenges and bad days in business. I mean, we've all had interesting journeys. What we haven't talked about is the bad days, the sad days, the days when it was an absolute disaster. And there have been people who have really have been exactly what I needed, exactly when I needed it. And I think that was a result of the relationships I built and the things that I did. It costs you nothing to do something nice for other people. So whilst no one owes you anything, 100%, it also costs you nothing to do something nice for somebody else. And that, I think and I don't have a quote for you, but there's lots of books about networking and all the sorts of things that everyone thinks is really important. I think the most important thing is find your tribe. I know who my tribe are. My closest friends, people that are building businesses or just have the same ethics and ethos than I do. Find your tribe, because those are the people that will take you with them.
Awesome. That's a whole part of what today's about. 600 of you that resonate with what
You
this
already
tribe's
have a
about.
tribe. This is a
Absolutely.
tribe. And you can all send Peter an email about how you're feeling about your
Yeah.
tribe. And he will be really excited about that
The
when
email
he gets
buddies?
back to the office.
I
Don't
will
forget his
love
email
it.
address.
Solly, what about you? Final thoughts?
Yeah, so probably my final thoughts is what's helped me be able to disrupt to the level that I have. And what I felt that was the team around me. So the people that have been surrounded around me, both sort of as advisors, but also that team that's within the company. You know, they've disrupted me on multiple different times. And if you have a good set of people around you and you allow them, you give them a license to have a go, I think that's the difference. That's made the biggest difference for me. So that's probably one of the most important things for me.
Great. And Richard, to round us out.
I'm going to delegate this one. First of all, I just want to thank the panel because they've been fantastic. And can you give them a round of applause? But I heard you speak in Australia, and you speak beautifully, and you've just been asking questions. So I'd like you to, if you could have the final word on this, that'd be great.
Geez. Thank you. I appreciate that. I think my biggest bit of advice is to start before you're ready, which sounds absolutely counterintuitive, but the observation I would make, working with a lot of companies in change enablement around the world and elite sporting organisations and governments, is we continually wait for the perfect set of conditions to disrupt or to drive change or for things to really stack up in exactly the way that we want to. And I firmly believe that we're waiting for a mirage of readiness, that state that we just hope will come but actually doesn't really exist. So I think for those of you who are sitting there going, you know, whatever the hurdles are or the things that you're saying, oh, I've got to wait till I've got X experience, or we can only do it if it's this big, or I've got to finish my degree first, or I need to do whatever it is. Challenge yourself to go, how do I start before I'm ready? And to the points the panellists have made today, it doesn't have to be huge to begin with. Start small, engage with your customers as quickly as you can, iterate, build, be focused on your purpose and passion, but challenge yourself to start before you're ready and get going. That would be my best advice. Thanks.